My name's Elisabeth Deane, and this is Jethro, my husband. And we're both miniature painters, or very much inspired by the Indian and Persian miniature painting traditions. I'm also specifically inspired by Islamic geometry as well. And we're just going to start off with a short introduction to our work. And then we're going to talk in a bit more detail about the materials and the processes that are used in Indian and Persian miniature painting. So this seemed a good image to start with because it's Jethro's miniature version of me. And so my journey in miniature painting started in Udaipur with this miniature painter here who's called Ajay Sharma. And he gave me my first kind of little introduction into miniature painting, which has led me on this journey to go to the Prince's Foundation School of Traditional Arts, and also it's how I met Jethro. And so I'm just going to show you a few examples of my work. This is, we've just moved, we now live in London, but we were living in Cambridge last year, both of us preparing for solo shows. And so this is just me in my studio in Cambridge, and you can see examples of the natural pigments that we use in our work. We both use ancient traditional techniques and natural pigments, much like Indian miniature painters of the past and also of today. And I just wanted to show you this image quickly because it's sort of indicates how I became interested in geometries, and they're very much directly inspired from Persian miniature paintings, which tend to have more examples of these tiny, intricate geometries with very elaborate detail and sometimes gold work as well. And these are just a few examples of my work using gold leaf, palladium leaf, and some of the natural pigments. And so this one you can see is more directly inspired by Indian miniature painting, inspired by a miniature which is actually in the V&A. This piece is called the Golden Yoke, and it's inspired by a Buddhist story. And this one seemed a good one because it's me in my Persian studio, and the background is directly taken from a Persian miniature, but I put tiny little miniature versions of my own work within this painting as a kind of nod to our interest in traditional miniatures and tradition. And some images which are from my solo Grosvenor gallery.
This took Lizzie months and months to do, and it lived on our kitchen table and dining room table for a long time. I couldn't even eat dinner for a while sitting on the steps, but it was an incredible amount of kind of perseverance with this piece.
Yeah, so the one's more inspired by geometries. And over to Jethro.
I'm going to linger on that one a bit longer because I think it's beautiful, and that's what first drew us to miniature painting, really, is the emphatic colours teamed up with the subtlety of shading and lining and the exactitude of it. So yeah, I'm Jethro Buck. I'm also inspired by Indian miniature painting. Here are two examples of work, recent painting on the left and one I did a few years ago on the right. Applying the principles I learnt in Jaipur and at the Prince's School, but to my own motifs and themes. Here is it's called the Night Tree. It's actually inspired by pitchway painting, which is the same techniques as miniature painting, but on a larger scale. And this is on dyed linen cloth with gold gilding leaves, and added some little birds. When it was exhibited, there's a quote from Tor underneath saying, "Faith is the bird, feels the light and sings even when the dawn is still dark," which I like. This is before the sun's risen and the birds are singing, which is kind of hearing a lot of birds at the moment in lockdown. This is called The Night of the Glowing Sambar Tree, inspired by a story from the Gond tribe. They have, in central India, they have stories for every tree of the forest. And this one, I'm not sure I've got time to tell the story, but when I heard the story, I saw this in my head and thought it'd be nice to paint. I haven't got time, unfortunately. So here is two other paintings. This is the forest on the right, sorry, which was kind of imagining, I looked at some medieval miniatures and tapestry work, and it's imagining what would happen if the Mughals had got to England or Europe, and how would we depict some of the flora and fauna that I see around me, such as oak trees, horse chestnut trees, weeping willows, which you probably have, silver birch trees, alder trees. And on the left is, it's called Genesis. It's from an exhibition I had at Saatchi, which I looked at different creation stories from around the world, and this one was the biblical Genesis. I'll show you that in more detail at the end, because it's better to zoom in. So this is a detail from, in the bottom right, you can see there's an oak tree. So this is just to get an idea of the work that goes into it. And actually, in terms of linking to Wales, I initially wanted to try and source pigments from the British Isles, which is quite challenging, but the ochres I did actually manage to get from a cave in Wales called Clearwell Caves, where you can get lovely yellow ochres. The brown background I got from there, but also you had reds and a sort of purpley red.
So just a little bit about the materials that we use in miniature painting. Basically, they're naturally sourced from the environment. We try to use pigments which are naturally sourced from the environment. So this tends to be rocks, minerals, things like lapis lazuli, malachite. Yeah, I've got an example of lapis there. Cinnabar, some which are quite toxic. And we hand make all of our own paints. And some of them are from plants as well. So things like indigo. And then there's also the beautiful cochineal red, which is from crushed beetles. It makes, when you dilute it, it's a very beautiful pink, and or it's a very intense red color. And so in terms of a little bit about the process, this is a mineral piece of lapis lazuli. It's crushed with a metal pestle and mortar. This was taught to us by Dr. David Cranswick, who is a teacher at the Prince's School, and he's an amazing man. He's a bit like a wizard, an alchemist of colour, and he has an amazing knowledge of how to make paint from natural materials. And lapis is particularly amazing. It's, you know, it was the most expensive pigment from one cave in Afghanistan until very recently. I think there's another cave or another mountain in Chile, but they have to use a donkey to get to this place and wait till winter when it's very cold, and you make a fire in the cave and then chuck icy water on it, and the rock cracks off, revealing this incredible blue. And then the next bit of the process is you filter or clean basically your pigment, and the impurities tend to float in the water, and the good pigment tends to sink to the bottom. And most pigments, like minerals, require quite a lot of cleaning, so things like malachite and lapis. And then this, at this point, you'll then start to actually make it into paint. So you have your beautiful pigment ready to go, and you mix that with a liquid form of gum arabic from the acacia tree. And I'm just going to just show you this short video. You grind it up on a glass slab with a muller, and this is an example of malachite. People often ask why bother going through this laborious and lengthy process when you can just squeeze it out of a tube. But I say it's akin to when you're doing something special, like going on a pilgrimage or something, you wouldn't just fly there. You want to take your time, you want to notice things, and the process of slowing down is you're not simply consuming things, you're trying to participate with it and take your time to connect to your environment and to connect to nature, partially. Kind of the beginning of creation, and it helps you with the creative process as well, because it sort of slows down your mind, ready for the actual process of miniature painting. Patience is required to make it all. So this is shell gold paint made from gold leaf, and Jethro and I have been very lucky to go to the gold making district in Jaipur, which you can definitely hear before you can see it. They beat gold nuggets into gold leaf, and then make it into gold paint. And then this is just a short video, just to I'll show you a clip of it.
He's called Shafiq Khan, and he's a master gold maker.
And you can see he's beating the leaf with his hands to make it into shell gold, which we sometimes do ourselves, but you can also source it from Turkey as well as India.
And also the paper, there's a place called Sanganer just outside Jaipur. And this is Hussein Papers. It's a family who have been making paper in the same way for hundreds of years. And they mix jute with hemp to turn it into a pulp. And this is we went to the factory. Sanganer well, the first time I went, it was outside Jaipur, but now Jaipur's grown so quickly over the past 10 years. It's very much in Jaipur now. And this is drying the paper out on the walls and using a camel bone as sandpaper to smooth out.
Yeah, to smooth out any bubbles. And then Vasli is the name of the traditional paper used for miniature painting, which basically means layers of papers. So here you can see her gluing some of the papers together.
And these are the brushes, the miniature brushes, which I've got one here. It's made from squirrel hair. It's an Indian squirrel. It looks a bit more like a chipmunk. And Ajay, my teacher, taught me how to make them. We now buy them from him. But so you find a squirrel. It has to be alive, because apparently if it's dead, the squirrel goes into rigor mortis and the hair loses its life. You dip the tail in water, and where it clumps together, when you have a shower or maybe washing a dog, it'll go to natural clumps. You cut the clumps off, and put it through this piece of metal. Traditionally, it would have been a feather, and let the squirrel go.
Sorry.
This is from, so this is some notes from our time at the Prince's School. Again, this is actually a Persian painting, but the method is essentially the same.
It's just showing you briefly the process from sketching out your design to applying the block colours and eventually putting in the tiny details and the gold detail. You
have to flood the colour on rather than brush on. With oil painting, you can use the hairs of the brush. This, you have a bead of water which you bring slowly down the page to create a flat colour. So this is when I went to Jaipur with Ajay. I hope he might have joined us today. If you're there, hi Ajay. Namaste. So the first week with Ajay, he got me copying stuff. So you can see a book of the Padshah. I copied an elephant from it just to try and learn the process. What did I do with this once I got back to England? Again, so this is applying the same techniques but to an oak tree, and you can see the shell gold on the leaves at the end, and western squirrels, and there's a jay there. And so, lots of people say, why is it so flat? It's kind of a surface decoration, but I would say it's not a surface decoration. It's a distillation of nature, and it may not be realistic, but it's naturalistic. And the process is more akin to gardening a painting. Once you understand these processes and repeat them, the paintings grow themselves. And I just wanted to demonstrate the processes I went through whilst doing the forest. So this is a horse chestnut tree. You go to the park and paint it as you see it. But what I like about miniatures is you can see them from afar. The details are from afar but close simultaneously. So look at the leaf from a close. And then on the top right, it's more of a kind of scientific view of how is this growing out? How does this leaf first form? And then applying that to methods and materials that I have. So you have to kind of listen to your brush. The tool dictates the form to a certain extent. So you have to think, what can a brush do? And the middle is a geometric study of a kind of archetypal perfect horse chestnut leaf, which has a lovely fourfold geometry. And so and the bottom right is the kind of stylized final design.
So we were really lucky to go and see the Garden and Cosmos, the paintings which are in the Garden and Cosmos exhibition at the British Museum, but up close in the painting archives in Moranga Fort. And and in the background of this one, you can see the amazing sort of stylized cosmic oceans, which have inspired or informed some of my painting. And here I'm just going to show you a short video, kind of indicates how of using the squirrel hair brush to do these kind of cosmic lines, and how much you have to sort of breathe in and
which we should do now,
calmly execute the lines. And you really do have to slow down and do this in an almost meditative fashion.
Here's a painting using lapis, which the stone we showed you earlier, and gold leaf with indigo shading. I was looking at how leaves are depicted in trees, but then just simply repeating that process. And so you begin to get these interesting fractal forms of growth. Yeah, this is a few paintings. So on the left is what I painted in Ajay's studio, where we copied this. It was a copy of Maharaja Diraj Singh on a horse, and then when I got to my studio back home, a kind of retro / contemporary version of the Mughal on a Vespa. And then recently I painted kind of the next chapter where he's got a family on his Vespa, and I want to paint one every year. I don't know, every decade or something, and more and more people are going to get onto the back of the motorbike. There's a chicken already on there, but I want more animals and more people.
And then we put this image in at the end just as a nod to the other. There are lots of artists inspired by Western artists inspired by Indian miniature painting, and these are a couple of examples of Olivia Fraser's work. But there are also other artists like Alexander Gorlitsky, Waswo X, who use these kind of miniature techniques.
And we were taught by Desmond Lazaro.
And Desmond Lazaro, yeah, there are lots of people working within these traditions.
Fatima Zahra Hassan. Miniatures should be viewed, traditionally you hold them in the hand rather than on the wall through a frame. And when you're painting it, you know, my nose is a few inches from the surface of the paper. And in terms of some of the stories earlier on today that we heard of biblical stories being tweeted, this is as part of an exhibition at Star Art Fair at the Saatchi Gallery. I looked at different creation stories from around the world. So I started with Genesis, and this was in the beginning is, you know, this is the void, similar to the painting we saw in Maranga Fort. Let there be light. The Spirit moved upon the waters, and then earth separated the waters. You know, I should zoom out a little bit more.
It kind of gives you an indication of how we as miniature painters see our paintings most of the time.
And it's done rather than a Western painting of a landscape, which is illusionary to the landscape, which is always over there through the arch of the frame. This is it's in your hands. The sun and the moon. The day was separated by night. The ocean was full of life and all the fish, and then the skies. All the birds. So these are, each bird in real life is about the width of my thumbnail, I guess. Then all the four-legged animals. And you read it more like a map. You read the image. And then here is the last day man was made, but I didn't want to paint man at the top. It was, it seemed a bit too hierarchical. It was what separates us from the other animals is we paint. We have art, we tell stories. So this is the painting inside the painting inside the painting. So this is, applying miniature techniques, but to Western stories. Each painting takes months and months and months to do. So I'm currently working on, well, this is kind of finished now, but I'm going to moving through all the colors. This is the orange. I'm going to do each color of the rainbow. And we had all the blossom out few weeks ago. So this is looking at, well, it's like Van Gogh meets miniature painting. I still have to do all the shading. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the shading in this because I'm a bit nervous. I don't want to ruin the painting, but I'll do some kind of warm-ups. So every time, before I put brush to paper, you have to kind of work the ink to the tip of the brush. And this is what Desmond and Ajay told me to do, is try and do a spiral just to start off. So I'll just start with it. I'm really not still enough. My hand's shaking. It's usually this is not very good. Let me try again. Solitary thing I'm not used to.
So just to get started, you often do lots and lots of these spirals until you get into the right sort of state in order to actually think about applying it even to your painting.
So this is not a very good spiral. Like I wouldn't start if my hand is shaking around too much.
But it gives you an idea. Gives you an idea how small it is.
I mean, I'd want to go smaller than that and get the ink right, but there's other ways. So that's just to warm up doing lines, and then there's other ways you can apply paint to do so you can get more water on your brush and more ink. This is kajal, which is from soot mixed with water and some watercolors. Let me just get more. So to do, what leaf should I do? I'll do. That is pretty unsymmetrical leaf. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what we do.
Thanks for listening.